I do think there is a line between being informed and empowered with knowledge and being overly anxious about something. So for me, I always tell my clients if I'm helping facilitate breastfeeding in the carrier that baby wearing is a skill and breastfeeding is a skill. And sometimes we are using baby wearing as a bridge to help with breastfeeding, but we always need to make sure that we have a thorough understanding of both of those skills and what's going on separately before we put them together.
Hey, Mama Bear. Welcome to the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast. Do you dream of bonding with your baby through exclusive breastfeeding, but worry about breastfeeding pain or low milk supply? Maybe you're struggling with breastfeeding and no one seems to have any answers. I'm Jaimie, doula, international board certified lactation consultant, and mom of 5, and I have been where you are. After working through painful latches, milk supply worries, and postpartum depression, and supporting countless mothers through their breastfeeding journeys for over 8 years, I'm here to tell you breastfeeding doesn't have to be perfect to be positive. Each week, I'll share breastfeeding tips to help you prevent and overcome unexpected breastfeeding challenges so you can actually enjoy bonding with your baby. If you are ready to shut out the toxic whispers of the world, embrace your God-given intuition, and release your inner fierce mama bear, grab some coffee or your favorite herbal tea and let's dive in. Welcome back to the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast. If you know anything about me, I could not have survived having 5 small children every 2 years without baby wearing. Baby wearing is a huge conversation I have with my moms that I work with. Breastfeeding and baby wearing is a really, really wonderful tool to have at your disposal. But there can be a lot of questions surrounding baby wearing, how to do it safely, which carrier is the right carrier, and just all kinds of questions, things you might not have even thought about. Today, we are joined by Jordan, the baby wearing OT, and she brings so much wisdom and so much information. You are going to love this episode. So if you want to learn anything about baby wearing, this is the episode for you. Thank you so much for coming, Jordan. I am so excited to have you here. Baby wearing is obviously a huge part of postpartum. As a lactation consultant, it's one of the things I'm always telling moms, like, we have got to get you learning how to baby wear because we can keep that skin to skin without it being such an, I hate to use the word inconvenience, but in our
Hmm.
life, it can be an inconvenience to have a newborn. So it's a way that we can
Hmm.
find that balance. And as a mom of 5, I absolutely could not survive without baby wearing. So I'd love to hear from you today about like your top tips for baby wearing. I'd love to chat a little bit about safely baby wearing and breastfeeding. And then I'd love to hear about your favorite carrier, and I'll share my favorite carrier.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I think that baby wearing and like breastfeeding, lactation in general is they're just such like a match made in heaven, right? So I guess a little bit about me. My name is Jordan Morillo. I'm an occupational therapist and a certified baby wearing consultant. I own my own private practice where I support families from pregnancy through 3 years postpartum with all kinds of things, baby wearing obviously being my main niche, but I do some sensory wellness services. I do some like general maternal health support and some infant development support as well. But yeah, baby wearing is my jam. It's such a great like mix with OT, so complementary when we're talking about infant development, postpartum recovery, positioning, and things. And so when I started baby wearing as a mom after my son had a NICU stay, it just opened up this entire new world for me. And so I realized that I wanted to help other parents do that. And so now I do virtual consultations all over the world. I've had clients in like the coolest places like Japan and Sweden and Australia. And then obviously I see tons of people in the US every day as well. So I've been working with brands on screening their carrier prototypes and helping them with fit
That's
checks
so
and
cool.
stuff. It's been super, super cool. I really feel like I found my calling. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of baby wearing. I think the history of baby wearing, like how ingrained it is so many cultures and how we lost that and we're finding it
yeah.
again is so beautiful. Yeah, I'm all about baby wearing. I'm obsessed with it. But I know there's a lot of conversation about doing it safely, which carriers are
Hmm.
good, which ones to avoid. I know there's a lot of even controversy over things like forward phasing, and it's just like all the things. So, would you mind kind of giving us the 30,000-foot view of what safe baby wearing looks like? I know with different carrier types, maybe it's a little different, but across the board, what are the things we look for safe baby wearing?
Yeah, so I really think if you're focusing on safe baby wearing, something that applies no matter the carrier type that I think like parents should focus on having a deep understanding of is positioning for the infant. If you can get positioning for the infant correct, the things you're checking off are the same for any carrier type. And if you know what to look for to support their development and to keep them safe, you can apply it to any carrier type. And so, kind of one of the main things that we want to do is we want to protect their airway and we want to protect their musculoskeletal system when we're thinking about development. And so, with the airway, the easiest way to do that is to one, make sure that they're high on your body. I tell parents close enough to kiss without straining. If they're having a hard time visualizing that, that little dip in between your collarbones is a great place for the top of baby's head to be. And we do that because when they're higher up, they're easier to monitor, but also our sternum and our chest is a part of our body that doesn't move and shift quite so much. It's like a firm, safe sleep surface, right? Because babies get a lot of support from the carrier, but their main source of support is our body and making sure that they're positioned well and firmly attached to our bodies. And the carrier is just the tool that's facilitating that instead of our arms. So keeping them high, always keeping their face in view no matter what. I never ever recommend covering your baby's head with anything, not the hood that comes on some of the carriers, not a nursing cover and leaving them covered, no burp cloths, nothing. Like you should always be able to see your baby's nose, you should be able to see their mouth, you should be able to tell that their chin is not slumped down onto their own chest. So you always want to visualize their face, and that's also giving them access to cool fresh air, which is really important because babies' respiratory systems are not as mature as ours yet. And so we just want to give them all the tools we can to make sure that they're breathing comfortably. Then, when you're looking at supporting the rest of their body, we want to see a gentle curve of the spine because that is keeping pressure off of the joints, like the spine and the hips. So, that's making sure that, we're not doing anything to add tension or tone or uneven pressure to the body. We want that kind of M seat that people talk about, where if you were to look at their legs, it's making a letter M with the knees being the highest point and the bottom being the lowest point. And sometimes that M is really exaggerated and sometimes it's a very shallow, almost like a lowercase m. But we always want to see knees in line or higher than the bottom. That is what you're looking for hip health. That's what you're looking for to support their ability to move and to protect their own bodies in the carrier. You just want to see that full spinal and hip support. And then for the adult, you want to make sure that the carrier is on correct and that it's comfortable. We don't want to see any tension or pulling on the upper neck, on the shoulders. We don't want it so tight that it's squishing you, especially in postpartum recovery. We don't want to feel like we're being squeezed. We don't want additional downward pressure. And we want to be mindful about how we're moving and how we're interacting with the world when we have baby's weight on us, right? So you want to be mindful of your balance. You want to be mindful of like additional loads that you're carrying, especially in postpartum recovery. Like you've already got 8 to 10 pounds of weight on your front. So, think about that when you're picking up other things, protecting the baby, but then also like protecting ourselves and our bodies as well, because both are important. And I think sometimes people get so focused on the baby that they don't protect their own body.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I appreciate you talking about postpartum. And, a lot of times we talk about not using belly binders and the risks that come with that. But then we put carriers on so tight and the way they're
Yeah.
placed, it could act like a belly binder.
Yes.
And so just being aware of how that impacts you postpartum, I think is really wise. And I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
that. When we're talking about positioning, I know I saw a post recently that was about a story that happened a few years back, but I guess it just
Mhm.
resurfaced. And it was a really tragic story of a baby who passed away being born
Yeah.
safely. And there was a lot of conversation around it saying, like, this is why you shouldn't breastfeed while you're
Mhm.
baby bearing and yada, yada, yada. And I thought about that because I'm like, as a lactation consultant, I'm always helping moms learn how to
Yeah.
breastfeed in their baby carrier, but that does require shifting that safe position
Yes.
that you talked about.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it does mean that we have to lower them. But if they are latching properly, they've got their airway wide open, they're
Mhm.
looking up. So, what are some tips that you have on safely breastfeeding your baby while baby wearing? Because for so many moms, like either their baby won't latch in another position, they're just so
Mhm.
busy, like will not get those frequent feeds in if they are not baby wearing. And I know it can be kind of hard to learn how to breastfeed in baby wear. How can moms make sure they're doing that safely without having to worry about these like one-off kind of random, absolutely tragic events that, can kind of sometimes mm, create a lot of anxiety that I don't want to say doesn't need to be there, but
Yeah.
I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we can be mindful of like the things that we need to do to protect our baby without being anxious about it, right? I do think there is a line between being informed and empowered with knowledge and being overly anxious about something. So for me, I always tell my clients if I'm helping facilitate breastfeeding in the carrier that baby wearing is a skill and breastfeeding is a skill. And sometimes we are using baby wearing as kind of a bridge to help with breastfeeding, but we always need to make sure that we have a thorough understanding of both of those skills and what's going on separately before we put them together. So you really need to know your carrier. You need to feel confident manipulating your carrier. You need to understand what, safe and ideal positioning looks like. You need to understand how to make adjustments if baby feels like they're not positioned properly. And then with breastfeeding, we need to understand what a proper latch looks like, what alignment should look like when it comes to the head, the neck, the shoulders, the trunk. We need to understand all of that. And we also need to understand the difference between actively feeding and when they're just like kind of passively suckling on the breast, because the general recommendation for breastfeeding and baby wearing is once they're done actively feeding, it's time to unlatch them and bring them back up into that high and safe position so that we don't get into a scenario where your baby only sleeps latched in the carrier and then they're sleeping in that loose and low position, and that's really unsafe, and that's where the risks start to happen. And so, parents need to understand what does an active feed look like on my baby versus when are they done and are they just kind of suckling for comfort and using it as a soothing tool to fall asleep. And so establish your baby wearing skills really well, establish your breastfeeding skills, or work with someone who can help you establish your breastfeeding
Yeah,
skills.
I'd love to
And
add to that if I can, that
yeah.
this doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with your baby pacifying and nursing
No,
at
absolutely not.
all, but we can learn techniques for, okay, baby
Yes.
is falling asleep. They
Yeah.
are just about done. They're like kind of doing that, like I'm popping off, but not fully. And so we can learn how to
Yes.
latch them and bring them up to that.
Yeah,
And while they
exactly.
anybody to hear that and be like,
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, okay, so, like, I'm a co-sleeping mom. My son was
yeah,
latched, like, 80% of the night when we were sleeping, but it's different. It's a lot safer to do that inside laying on a firm, flat surface in the
right.
cuddle curl than it is when they're loose and low down in the carrier, and then they're sleeping for an hour, you get distracted, and then they slump, you know?
Like, I just
You
wanted
yeah.
clear
Yes.
distinction so anybody listening
Yes.
doesn't get confused.
No, 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 absolutely, yes, like, feed your baby to sleep all you want. My son was exclusively fed to sleep for the first 2 years of his life, so, yes, do that, but just know that once they fall asleep, that's where the risk tends to happen for their airways becoming compromised, and so, we want to build a habit, at least in the carrier, of, like, once they're starting to fall asleep, it's time to get them off the breast and bring them back up or transfer to co-sleeping or something like that. So yeah, know your carrier well, know when your baby is kind of done actively feeding, and just bring them back up into that high and tight position and reposition everything so that when they're sleeping, they're up on the firm, flat, stable part of your chest instead of down in like the soft tissue where they could accidentally smother, where they could slump down easily because there's more mobility going on around the waist and the trunk and things. And then the other thing to know is that when you are feeding them in that loose and low position, best practice now is to kind of keep like more of a koala position if possible. We don't really teach the cradle hold in a carrier anymore because that's where the most incidents have happened. And so, like learning like kind of what that upright koala feed feels like and what the alignment looks like for that. And then it's not hands free with a young baby, maybe with a baby over 1, 1.5, 2, who's like very mobile and can kind of hold themselves onto the breast, you can be totally hands-free. But when it's a young baby who's not yet sitting, who's not yet crawling, who just doesn't have like the mature trunk that we're looking for, it's a one hand assist. So you can be doing something with one hand, but you would want to keep one hand like on their upper shoulders, on their back while they're in that loose and low position to support them. And then once you bring them back up into the high and tight position and reposition them, you can be hands free again.
Um, this is just personal experience. You're the expert
Mhm.
on. I have personally had very large babies, and my
Yeah.
favorite carrier with them was the Tula Free to Grow, and
Yeah,
I
I
was
love that
able
one.
to adjust that one more, that I was able to create more stability with the carrier
Mhm.
behind that, so that if I did have to, I mean, I just naturally would always hold anyway,
Yeah,
but if I did have to, I've got 5 kids. So there were
sure.
times where it's like, I'm picking somebody up to put them in the car,
Yeah,
like I'm doing a movement and the baby's latched still. And so I'm not able to hold at that point. But I
yeah.
felt like that carrier versus, say, a ring sling, I was able to get more stability if I did have to take my hand off briefly. So do you ever find that like different carriers provide a different level of stability when we're in those feeding positions?
Not necessarily. I think with if you have the carrier positioned properly, they should all provide the same level of stability, like if it fits well your baby. I think there's a difference between taking your hand off for a second to like put someone in a car seat than like walking around for 10 to 15 minutes with your baby just like dangling down there and you're doing something else and not like keeping a hand on them. So I
Ever
think there's like,
do you ever find that mom's body type makes a big difference in that?
yes.
Because I'll say, like, I'm very small and generally small chested, so I don't have to slide my baby down a whole lot. Like I can just kind of like, and so maybe that's a difference too, is that I don't really even need to loosen them up a whole lot for them to latch. Whereas I know other moms have to dramatically adapt the baby's position for them to feed while breastfeeding.
Yeah, I mean, breast anatomy and body size definitely makes a big difference in like how much you're having to loosen and lower. But I think like the overarching guidelines of watching for active feeding, retightening, keeping a hand on them majority of the time, being mindful, checking in, monitoring them. I think that
Yeah.
is like those guidelines are regardless of body type or carrier
Yeah.
type or anything
Yeah.
like
It's
that.
like use common sense. Don't completely just like forget about your baby though.
Yeah, well, it's hard because I don't think anyone, like, purposely forgets about their baby,
Oh,
but, when you have, like, multiple kids,
yeah.
like, you get distracted for a second, opening a snack for them, and then you're like, "Oh, yeah, and now I need to do this thing. Oh, okay, wait, and now I need to do this thing," and then suddenly it's been, like, 15 or 20 minutes, and if you haven't had a hand on them that whole time, you might not have noticed that they fell asleep and have shifted down in the carrier.
And
So I
then
think
that
that's
goes back to recognizing that active feeding though too, because you can
right.
kind of monitor that. So I think it's
Yeah.
using all those cues and just all those little data points to come together. Talking about different body types, how do you see like different body types impacting baby wearing? Do some body types do better with certain carriers than other carriers? And what's kind of your insight on how everybody can baby wear? Because I have met moms who are like, I just wasn't built for baby wearing. Like I've got too much chest or something to that effect. And I'm like, no, there's ways you can do it. So what's
Yeah.
your insight on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think like everyone is drawn to the buckle carriers because they're, quote, quick and easy. I'm putting quotes around that because they have just as much of a learning curve as other carriers. People just don't realize it because they look easy. People are drawn to buckle carriers. Those are going to be the least customizable for different body types. And so with buckle carriers, to get your ideal fit, first you have to find your ideal buckle carrier. And the buckle carrier that works best for you might not be the buckle carrier that works best for your best friend. So I think a lot of people struggle with like, my body doesn't work for baby wearing because they're trying on buckle carriers that aren't the right one for their body. And so that's a great opportunity to work with a lending library or a consultant or something like that where you can try on lots of different ones to figure out what works for you. But I will say wraps and ring slings are more customizable, and you can customize a wrap or a ring sling to fit basically anybody. I have never met someone that I couldn't get a good fit with a sling or a wrap. So I think if you're willing to learn those kinds of carriers, which I love for the newborn stage anyway, like I think that that's a great way to go if you're worried that like a buckle carrier isn't going to fit your body or if you don't have like the resources available to try on lots of different buckle carriers. But in general, yeah, buckles are the ones that give people the hardest time with a customized fit, and those wraps and slings are gonna fit anybody and go between caregivers really easily.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I started with ring slings and loved my ring
Mhm.
sling. And then I moved to like the regular Tula, like the very first model. And it was so hard to learn. And I thought it was going to be easy. And it was so dramatic. Like my son was
Yeah.
9 months old. And
Uh-huh.
I remember like I had no idea how to do it and I could not figure
Yeah.
it out. So I would lay him, like I had I guess he was a little bit older. I had a SUV and I would lay the thing, like lay the wrap out, lay him on it, and then like
Oh
lay
my
kind of
gosh,
on top
that's
of him,
so
but not
funny.
to try and
Yeah.
pull him over.
Yeah, so people
Just
do
because
that, they do.
how this has to work. And now, I don't know if it's just because I started with them younger. It's like my daughter, I like throw her on my back and I'm
Yeah.
putting her on. It's like nothing. She knows to hold on. She just sits there
Yeah.
and holds on while I put her up. And it's so funny how different it is. It became very easy, but
Yeah.
starting out, oh my goodness, that was not as easy as I expected.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure like you run into this with helping parents with breastfeeding. Baby wearing is a skill. And I think sometimes like the way it's talked about, it's getting better. But the way breastfeeding and baby wearing are both talked about puts people at a disadvantage because they're talked about as it's easy, it's intuitive, it's natural. Anybody can do it. And anybody can do these skills, but like you have to learn. You need support. You have to learn if you didn't grow up where like these things were shown to you and taught to you naturally as part of growing up in your village, you're not going to know what to do. It drives me crazy how everything, especially baby carriers are marketed quick, easy, fast. And I'm like, that's not the point. I know that's like that marketing is attractive to parents, but
Yeah.
like I want to see it marketed as complimentary fit checks so you have the support you need, beautifully detailed tutorials that you can watch and learn what you need, like,
Yeah, no, these little sketches. It's like, here, this is how you do it with this little sketch
yeah, it
manual.
doesn't
I'm
even
like,
look
what?
it doesn't
What?
even look like the carrier and they like
No.
leave out they say put the straps on and that's the instruction step and it's like put the straps on how? What am I looking for with like what piece goes where? How do I know it's right? Put the straps on. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
And the same with wraps. Oh my gosh, wraps. I
Yeah.
wanted so badly to love wraps. And I had this beautiful patriotic red, white, and blue wrap that was just
Yeah.
amazing. It became a rebozo for my doula work because
I mean,
I
hey, yeah.
I could not use it for baby wearing. I tried so hard. And one time I like in the parking lot realized I was about to drop it in a puddle. And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
This is too much for me. It's ring slings or tulas for me.
Yeah.
But what is your, I know it's very person dependent, but what is your go-to carrier for you?
Yeah, so it is super person dependent, and I always hesitate to share my faves because I don't want people to, so don't copy my fave. Just because I love it doesn't
Yeah,
mean it's gonna work for you. But I'm a ring sling girl. If I had to pick one carrier and only one carrier, I would pick a ring sling. That I love the ring slings for the newborn stage. I love how easy they are to feed in. I love that you can do a hip carry as baby gets older. I love that you can back carry in them. I
yeah,
like a good torso carry to sit down and have some lunch and not have anything on my shoulders. So, I think the ring slings are such a great tool. They're not quite as intimidating as like the wraps, but they're more customizable and more comfortable for me personally than a lot of the buckle carriers.
yeah.
So,
What are your thoughts on, and this just came up in my head when you were saying this, like the ring slings for the water, the mesh ring slings, baby wearing in the water. What are your thoughts on that? Recommendations?
yeah. Yeah, I think baby wearing, in the water is like a great option for summer, especially if you have a toddler that you're going to take to the splash pad or the pool or something, and then you need to take your newborn with you and you don't want to leave them in a stroller on the shore or whatever. So, kind of like the general guidelines with baby wearing in the water, your carrier needs to be purposefully made to go in the water. Like the manufacturers will be very clear on that. They'll use it as a marketing strategy. It will be stated water friendly. If you can't figure out if it's water friendly, it's not water friendly, and you shouldn't use it in the water because it will mold, it will fall apart, like bad things happen. So it needs to be water friendly. And then kind of the general guidelines are watch your baby's positioning and reposition when you go from dry to wet and wet to dry, because a lot of times the carrier will shift. And then we want to be thinking about the kind of water we're going into. So, like, generally rough, slippery, rocky river type situations are not where you should be wearing your baby. If you're on a boat and they're supposed to have a life jacket on, that's not where you're going to wear your baby in a carrier. But if you're going to a splash pad with your toddler, or like you're gonna get in the pool and you're standing still at the edge of the pool, you're playing with your toddler, You can go in up to about hip height is generally what people recommend. And then, just watch your baby and make sure that they're not getting too cold. Make sure that the water is staying out of their face. Only wear them facing in. There's this carrier company that's getting a lot of heat right now for putting these ads out where they only face out their baby into the water, which is super unsafe because you don't know if they're getting splashed. We can't support their airways quite the same way. It's just so facing inward, hip height, calm water, and just check in when you go from wet to dry or dry to wet.
On the phasing out point, do you have any quick thoughts? I know it's probably a little nuanced. Do you have any quick thoughts on phasing out? Because I know I have my opinions on it. I tend to lean toward baby should always be facing in. I understand
Mhm.
why people go facing out. Just from what I've learned, I don't think that's a great option for everybody. So I don't really advocate for that. And if somebody asks, how can I wear them outward facing? I'm going to be like, you need to ask somebody else because I can't help
Yeah.
you with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like as an OT, I also don't recommend it as best practice. However, I will teach it if a parent asks me because I think like, telling them no, they're going to go do it anyway and they might get information that's not correct from someone else. So I always tell people, "Hey, I don't recommend this. It's harder on your body as the adult because their center of gravity is now pulling away from you instead of shifting in towards you. It's also a little bit harder on their body because like I said earlier, they get support from your body and from the carrier. And so now when they're facing out, they no longer have that support in front of them from your body. And so they're having to work harder to stay upright. So it's just tougher on their body. So if you're going to choose to world face, which again, not my fave, I don't recommend, but if you're going to do it, you need to look for a carrier that is again explicitly designed for world facing. And I would be picky. There are some of the more like softer paneled buckle carriers that say they do world facing, and the babies look atrociously positioned every time. It is bad. Two that I recommend that I feel like are more supportive, they just have more structure to them, they're stiffer, they just offer a higher level of support, are the Tula Explorer and the Ergo Baby Omni 360. Those are the two on the market that I see right now that do like as optimal of a job as possible. Again, it's not as good as facing in.
I always think of the hangover scene where they
Oh my
have the
gosh.
baby facing outward, and it's like
Yeah,
I
it was
cringe
terrible.
so bad, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's people see that and they're like, "Oh, super
Yeah,
judge wear baby
TV.
hanging off the front," and I'm like, "This is
Yeah.
like." So I'll see people wearing their babies like that. I remember
Yeah.
I was at the zoo with some other people when my baby was really little, and one of them saw somebody like that and was like, remind me to never let my baby do that. They didn't even have kids. And I was like, I'm so glad somebody like else
Yeah.
sees that this
Yeah.
is being
TV is hard.
normalized, but it
Yeah.
shouldn't be.
Right, TV and movies are hard because, like, it's better on screen for the baby to be facing out, right? Like, you can see them more, so that works from, like, an aesthetic position from the TV, but so if you're going to do it, pick one of the carriers where they're well supported. They should still have an M seat. They should still have a curve of their spine. The top of their chin needs to clear that panel. If your baby is short and you put them in and the panel is coming up to their chin, it's pressing on their neck, it's covering their mouth, that's not safe. And then the absolute bare minimum for like motor development is a tripod sit, which doesn't happen for most babies until at least 4.5 to 5 months. And so if your baby is 2, 3, 4 months old and they're not sitting yet, they're not safe to world face. And they should never sleep in world facing. And so, like, you have all of these things you need to follow, right? That it's so much harder than facing in. If you're wondering if you need to face out because sometimes it's marketed almost as like a progression, right? They face in, then they face out, then they back carry. You can skip facing out. You absolutely can skip it. You can face them in, you can hip carry them, and then you can back carry them.
I think from a development standpoint, people think,
Yeah,
oh, I have to face them outward so they can
right.
see things and learn them. And I'm like,
No,
that's not true because my baby is like,
they
once
can
they
see
hit a
just
certain
as
stage,
well.
they turn their head all the way around like an
Yeah,
well, when they want to see something. My brother took a picture of one of my babies on my back, wanted to see him. I was doing a
yeah,
back in the Tula, and he was tight. I don't know how he did it. He just flipped his head backward to look at my
yeah,
brother, and it's so funny. Like he was
yeah. They
like,
can
I
see.
want to
They can
see
see
something.
just
I need to
fine.
see it. They're not
Yes.
missing out on anything. They're not like only seeing mom's chest. Like
No,
they
they can
are
see.
able to see.
They can see just fine. Yeah, I have taken my son all sorts of places and he has seen everything he wanted to see. And if they're really straining to look at something, just turn your body a little bit and let them see it.
Right,
So,
I agree. I feel like we've only been talking for like 5 seconds. It's already been almost a half
oh my
hour,
gosh.
and I feel like we hit so much important stuff, and I think this is gonna be really valuable. I think a lot of moms hearing this are gonna feel like they kinda know where to
Yeah.
start now. What resources do you have available? Where can moms find
Yeah.
you to learn more?
Yeah, so my Instagram is a great place to start if you want to learn more about baby wearing. It's just at thebabywearing.ot. I have tons of free resources on there. Everything's organized into highlights by carrier type. So if you have a ring sling, you can just go watch all of my ring sling videos in one place. And then if you start with my free resources, you feel like you want more support. I do one-to-one 15-minute fit checks for $15 worldwide. That's a great place if you
That's
have a
gonna
carrier. Yeah,
amazing.
you have a carrier and you've tried it on a couple times and you're just not sure about it, that's a lovely resource. Or then if you have multiple carriers, you're pregnant and you're trying to figure out the best carrier for you, you're wanting you and your husband and your mom to all learn how to baby wear. I offer 45-minute consultations too. Those are also available worldwide. Those are great for like more in-depth things. So, I mean, either way, you've got a fit check or you've got a full-blown consultation. And all my consultations, the longer ones come with a month of follow-up support. So then I'm in your village for an entire month, which a lot
That's
of parents love.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I'm going to have to put your name on a card for my clients because 'cause they're always like, "While you're here, can you teach me how to use this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I can, to a
Yeah.
degree." And then,
Yeah.
like, sometimes it's like it's not that it's hard, it's just sometimes there's
Yeah.
nuance that I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, maybe talking to someone else," and, there can be different things, and this is probably a whole other conversation that can make
Yeah.
it a little bit harder to baby wear. Like, if you had a
Yep.
C-section or if your baby's dealing with reflux, baby wearing could be an absolute comfort, or it could be something that triggers
Yeah.
them.
Baby
And
has
so
torticollis,
exactly.
tension.
It's like
Yeah.
there's so many things we need to look at. And a lot of the people I do work with, I'm like, I want you baby wearing, like, I want you baby wearing, like, this needs to be part of our care plan. But sometimes baby's not ready for one
Yep.
reason or another.
Yes.
And so just kind of having that extra set of eyes, like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe we need to make an adaptation
Yep.
here. And I think that's such an amazing resource that
Yeah.
moms benefit from. And it's always again, it's not one thing. Like you said, it's a learned skill. We've got all these
Yeah.
different, and when we're putting them all together, sometimes pieces don't match up perfectly.
Yeah.
So having an extra set of eyes to just kind of help you figure that out, I
Well,
think
and
is
just like
valuable.
learning as a parent is hard. Like learning new skills is so hard. And so the more people you can have that feel supportive to you, that know what they're doing, that are on the other side. They're not sleep deprived. They're not dealing with the hormonal fog. They don't have a gut reaction every time their baby cries.
Yeah,
It's good to have people who are just calm and solid and can tell you exactly what's actually going on. So you're not wondering, am I doing this right? Is this wrong? Am I seeing something?
yeah.
It's just nice.
Sometimes I think we try to learn so much
Yeah.
that it's almost like information overload and we
Yep.
can't get the pieces we need. So having
Yep.
somebody like you to walk through how to get this good fit, or how
Yeah.
to get a baby carrier that you can only afford, this is our experience, we could only afford one Tula. So
Yes.
me and my husband had to use the same one, but it fit very differently on us. So how
Yeah.
adjust that. And so
Yeah.
having an expert walk you through that is so much
Yeah.
better than trying to figure it out your own and learning way too much that you don't even need, and then just being
Right.
overwhelmed and feeling paralyzed by that.
Yeah, or learning wrong. I hate to say that, but I'm seeing such a trend of like baby wearing being popularized by social media and like influencers and stuff, which is great. I'm glad it's becoming more popular, but sometimes it's being taught wrong as it's becoming more popular. And so having someone who's been trained and knows exactly what they're talking about and isn't just copying a video that they saw from someone else who copied a video that they saw from someone else who copied a video. So like playing that telephone where the skills kind of break down as it passes from person to person.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, the
I'm
same
sure
goes
you
for
see the same with
it goes
breastfeeding.
for
Yeah.
breastfeeding. Like,
Or someone's
on
just
one
making a
hand,
recommendation and you're like,
it's so hard because on one hand, it's like we want women to learn
yeah,
from women, right? Whether that's
yeah,
that village support. But on the other hand, we've lost so much of that wisdom that we're trying to
yeah.
bring it back. And sometimes we're bringing back really bad, quote, wisdom
Yeah, you're
and
just like
trying to
repeating
apply it
something you
to everyone.
heard. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you don't know why you're teaching it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, just maybe that was really good advice for you, but it doesn't actually apply to this other person's
Right.
situation, and now it could
Yeah.
make it worse. So understanding there's nuance with everything, I think, is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, and that's like we said, that's so hard to figure out as a new parent. That's where the information overload comes in. And so just knowing that you have like a trusted team of people who are going to tell you, yeah, that's actually been proven wrong. Here's what you need, and you don't have to go Google it. You just have someone who is the Google for you and they can just tell
Yes,
you.
yes,
Yeah.
and they can explain why. Because I
Yeah.
Google things and I'm like, "Okay, I understand that theoretically, but why?
Why?
X,
The
Y, Z,
why
and
is
not
so
X, Y, Z."
important.
And you can just understand that better. So I appreciate your time so much. I think this was
Yeah.
fun. It was so informative. I am so excited to share it with the world. All right, Mama Bear, that is a wrap for today. If this episode helped you feel a little more confident or a little more prepared for breastfeeding, can I ask you a quick favor? Go ahead and leave me a review. It helps other moms find this podcast and join us in this amazing community of fierce and confident mama bears. And hey, if you know a friend who could use some encouragement or real talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and all things motherhood, share this episode with her. You've got this, Mama Bear. Trust your instincts, stay fierce, and I'll catch you in the next episode.